looks imminent. Proceed to the emergency vessels.
Okay, I'm in.
Now let's get the hell out of here.
It's taking so long.
We need to pump all the water out before we take off.
Can't you do it any faster?
I'm almost there.
Brace for impact! Hold on, the blast just pushed us off the plateau!
What does that mean?
If I don't hit Delta, we're dead.
Simon has wandered the hulls of Upsilon. He's traversed the pelagic underworld of the Atlantic and made his way through the Curie, all in hopes of finding answers and eventually reaching the Ark. He has seen so much, learned so much, but it's at Delta where Simon stumbles upon the WoW's most horrific tableau yet. After the EV crash, Simon wakes on the doorstep of Site Delta. Much like the other Pathos 2 stations, Delta is abandoned and fallen into disrepair. Upon arrival, he finds a series of tracks leading towards an assembly line where large, empty shells sit unused. These resemble the space gun capsule found at Site Phi, indicating that it's here, at Delta, where these containers were manufactured. Following the tracks in the opposite direction, Simon discovers a series of outbuildings, a comms antenna, a landing platform, and a lone mockingbird. Delta, it seems, is little more than a ghost town. It's quiet and unassuming. The only source of sound to cut the silence is the voice of the universal helper, the aforementioned mockingbird, which, after listening to its dialogue, we can identify as David Goyer, a wrangler who was stationed at Delta. Unlike many of the other mockingbirds found roaming around the Atlantic, this one is not hostile. Delta is, for lack of a better word, safe. However, that doesn't mean it hasn't been affected by the WoW's perverse machinations. Months before Simon awakens in Upsilon, Delta was home to Astrid Krier, Brandon Wan, David Goyer, and Terry Akers. Judging by the shipping manifest found near the Zeppelin's landing platform, it would seem the WoW's corruption hadn't had much effect on Delta, at least not at the same time as the other Pathos 2 stations. For instance, while Upsilon staff was scrambling to evacuate and activate its automation process, Delta was still receiving shipments from other stations, the most recently documented being a malfunctioning Haimatsu suit from Site Phi. For them, it was business as usual. Robotic assembly arms constructed the payload capsules for the space gun, while Delta's Wranglers piloted UHs to do repairs, research, and cartography. If the David Goyer Mockingbird is any indication, life at Delta was likely slower paced in comparison to the other stations. With the exception of Brandon Wan, it can be surmised that all Delta staff shared a unanimous affection for the station. Some more than others, it seemed. On August 12, 2103, Terry Akers, the station's chief factor, was contacted by Dorian Kronstent, the administrative supervisor of Theta. He informed him that the crew of Delta was to evacuate the Theta. Akers was less than thrilled by the order, but complied nonetheless, agreeing to relocate his staff while he remained behind at Delta. It appears that Akers then excommunicated himself from all other staff. On December 25, 2103, Peter Strasky, the dispatcher at Theta, reached out to him after months of radio silence, but the olive branch either went unnoticed or ignored entirely. Akers never responded. Then, on January 15, 2104, Akers broke his silence and contacted Strasky.
Peter, can you hear me?
I hear you, Terry. I mean, Mr. Akers, sir.
I've changed my mind. I would like to come to Theta. Let Delta sleep.
Of course. Wow. Honestly, didn't expect to hear from you again. Such a long time since you checked in. We have a few divers in a Zeppelin surveying Lambda at the moment. I'll just make sure they pick you up when they're done.
Thank you for the warning. I'll make sure they feel welcome.
Okay. See you when you get here.
The monotone and stilted nature of his voice seemed to unnerve Strasky. In truth, if he could see the face attached to that voice, he'd be terrified to the brink of madness. Sometime later, the Komarebi survey group arrived, fresh from their investigation of Site Lambda. They were to extract Akers and bring him to Theta so that he may rejoin the other members of his team. However, things did not go according to plan. The being at Delta may have resembled Akers, but he most certainly was not Akers. Not anymore, at least.
You saw that, right? You saw Akers fucking injecting that shit into them?
He got me pretty bad.
I think I made it worse pulling away. I can feel it bleeding out. Can you see him?
Fuck. He got on the Zeppelin. He's going back to Theta. We have to warn them.
Good luck with that. The platform radio is dead, remember?
The Loomer annex should work. It has to.
Yeah. You go. I'm not gonna make it. I'm just not.
Come on, Evans. We have to warn them. Come on.
Data mining the body found in Delta's control room reveals that Akers attacked the extraction team and injected some of them with, presumably, structure gel. The face and chest of the body found in the control room, which belongs to Sean Evans, is covered in bizarre gaping punctures, which might have something to do with those injections. It could be argued that those aren't wounds at all, but are instead growths, calcified like pieces of coral and resembling something similar to what we'll see on Akers' body later on. It can be speculated that these growths might actually be the end result of his injections, though it isn't really clear. Interestingly, the bodies found near the Zeppelin landing site are nowhere near as skewered as Evans's. They are instead fused into what resemble biomasses, a metamorphosis which also might have something to do with Akers' injection. In truth, the only member of the extraction group whose physiology is neither changed nor consumed is Maggie Komarebi's, which I presume is because she managed to avoid being injected by Akers entirely. However, that did not save her from meeting the same dark fate as her comrades.
Come in, Strasky. Can you hear me? Theta, listen. Akers is headed for Theta.
Delta Loomer Annex, getting a signal but no audio.
Strasky, it's Komorebi. Akers has gone mad. He's dangerous. Strasky!
Sorry, Delta, still no audio. Try calling from another access point.
Strasky, I can try sending pictures.
Komarebi's body can be found in Delta's auxiliary station. Her remains are attached to a cable connected to the WOW. Besides her corpse is a PDA, which contains photos revealing the final moments of the Komarebi survey group. These photos also provide Simon, and the player, the first real glimpse of Terry Akers. The next glimpse comes in a far more disturbing form. In one of Delta's outbuildings, Simon finds a pair of eyes, sitting neatly in a pool of blood. It's a macabre scene, punctuated by the writing found on the walls. Writing which speaks of divinity, but reeks of madness. The words indicate that the eyes found on the floor were forcibly and voluntarily removed by Akers himself in an attempt to fulfill his mission to the WOW. There's even a madly scribbled note found on a nearby console which helps reinforce the macro timeline. With this, we can determine that Akers was still Akers as far back as July 2103, since the note states, "Half a year ago, I'd be worried." If we can take the half-year claim at face value and map it up with when the Komarebi survey group had arrived at Delta, and we can surmise that Akers did not start succumbing to the WOW for about a month prior to being contacted by Dorian Kronstent, which would likely explain his unwillingness to leave Delta. So what triggered his change? Judging by the photos and drawings found in that outbuilding, Akers seemed to have a fondness for coral. It's a relatively innocuous observation, and yes, it could mean nothing at all. Just an example of the game's writers imbuing a character with idiosyncrasies in an attempt to humanize him. But without jumping ahead, consider what's become of his body when we do finally see him at Theta. These drawings and the photos serve two purposes. One, to provide hints of the horror to come, and two, to provide insight into a possible fixation that may have had some influence on the monster he becomes. If nothing else, Akers did seem to love chess, as exemplified by the words of the Goyer Mockingbird, and by the play count found on Akers' computer. Interestingly, when you try to start a game of chess using one of those computers, you get an error message stating corrupt opponent, which is a playful, if not subtle, nod towards Akers' corrupted state of being. Pushing forward, Simon manages to hail the Zeppelin. When it docks, he can data mine an audio exchange from a nearby transmitter. This one between the corrupted Terry Akers and the WOW.
Do you hear me speaking? Of course you do. I wanted to let you know that I know. You didn't blindly pick me out of the herd. The slow waves of Delta crashing against the shore have an undertow that pulls you into a slumber. It's a beautiful thing. And I won't be selfish. I will help. Tuck them in. Watch them sleep. They too will find peace within the universe of the WOW.
It's safe to presume Akers contacted the WOW while en route to Theta, as this would likely be the first time since the evacuation of Delta that he had left his station. The transmission proves that Akers was fully conscious while riding the Zeppelin. However, after disembarking the Zeppelin, Simon finds another transmitter. Data mining this one reveals that Theta's rescue team actually found Akers unconscious.
Strasky, wake up Dr. Masters. We're bringing in Akers.
What's wrong?
What can I say? He's had a rough day.
Jesus Christ. He's all butchered by structure shrapnel. The WOW sure did a number on him.
Brandon, flip the panic switch on the suit. I don't want to burn through the oxygen.
You're kidding, right? He's fucking hanging on by a thread. We need to move him.
Strasky, get the infirmary ready. We need to move fast.
Wait, where are Kumarabi and the others?
This is all we got. I guess it's still at Delta.
Emma, I can't do this on my own. Grab the other side.
Strask, ready or not, we're coming in.
All right, see you soon.
I believe it likely that this unconsciousness was self-induced. Granted, there hasn't been a precedent set in-game to support this theory, but it's the only logical conclusion one can make regarding how and why Akers, who was previously awake at Delta, is now unconscious. The abilities of the proxies aren't entirely defined, so the theory holds water as far as I'm concerned. Simon arrives at the grounds surrounding Theta. It's here where the narrative focus shifts a bit. Our time in Delta had been building up to an encounter with Akers. However, the early portion of Theta concerns itself less with Akers and more with fleshing out the backstory of what happened with the Ark project. This is going to be a huge detour, but one that must be taken since Delta and Theta are interconnected in a way that all other hitherto sites have not. Near the Zeppelin landing site, Simon finds a handheld communicator, which he can data mine.
Sarah, are you there? Who is this? Catherine? I'm busy working. Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for what you did. Don't worry about it, but you should stand up for yourself. I mean, Strohmeyer doesn't have that kind of authority. You could just tell him to go fuck himself. Oh, I just don't. I'm not that kind of a person. You can't expect people to fight for you all the time. You're a brilliant person, Kath. You're so smart it makes my head spin, but sometimes you just disappear into yourself. Suddenly it's like talking to a fucking 5-year-old. It's just hard. I can't just be more like that. Everyone would know I'm pretending. It's not too late to win people over. Strasky likes you. I like you. Reed likes you. Strasky likes everybody. Yeah, that's true. Wait, you think Reed likes me? Catherine, a lot of people like you. You just need to open up a little. Be more approachable. Can I get back to work now? I'd rather not be reprimanded twice in one day. Okay, see you back inside. Over and out.
This communicator reveals that Catherine was in contact with a colleague named Sarah, a woman who will prove to be the ultimate epitaph of humanity. Catherine, as it turns out, was prone to being harassed by a man named Strohmeyer. A nearby communicator provides further insight into this conflict.
This thing on? Can everyone hear me?
Go ahead, Strom.
Listen up, all members of staff. The Ark project has caused a lot of arguments the last few months. I'm not going to pretend I understand what the hell Sarang talked about and how his continuity suddenly made sense to kill yourself. For the fucking love of God, or whatever you think is important, don't kill yourself. This place is miserable enough. Don't force your friends to clean up your blood. Rest in peace. Quality. Good?
Beautiful, sir. All right, everyone. Show's over. Get back to work.
Strohmeyer, the host of the transmission, reveals that the ARC project was connected to someone called Sarang, whose idea of continuity convinced some people at Theta to commit suicide. This is expounded on further when Simon encounters another mockingbird, this time on the doorstep of Theta. This one, like the Carl and Goyer mockingbirds, is not hostile, and, also like its predecessors, it isn't entirely lucid either.
It's different, though.
Hello?
Who is that? Mark?
No, we haven't met before.
Is this Mark?
I think we're safe.
Oh, I was so worried something had gone wrong.
What's your name?
Robin Bass, Theta Field Service Technician.
Nice to meet you, Robin. How did you get here?
I got scanned, like the others. And then I killed myself. At least I think so. I can't remember that part.
How does that work? Did dying get you into the Ark?
Wow, you're definitely not from Theta. Let me guess, Omicron? Wasn't sure Catherine would be able to scan you guys. You're lucky. There was a lot of talk about this at Theta. The idea is, when you're activated in the Ark, there's basically two of you, right? One human, one living scan in the Ark. You don't want your copy to survive you. You yourself want to survive on the Ark. If the human you dies before the scan is initiated, or closely after, you yourself would live on in the Ark. Amazing, right?
Did Catherine put you up to this? Killing yourself?
Catherine Chun? No. I don't think you understand. She just did scans and put them into the Ark. I hope I get to meet her soon so I can apologize. She always got into trouble with Strohmeyer when someone killed themselves.
I think she's okay with it.
Where is everyone? I thought there would be like 40 or 50 people here.
I don't know. I'll let you know if I see anyone.
The mockingbird is simulating the personality of Robin Bass, one of the many victims of the wildfire notion the people of Theta called the continuity. She explains that she killed herself after getting scanned, so that she could access the Ark. Robin here functions as a bit of a data dump, providing Simon and the player with a plethora of clues into what happened at Theta. 1. She indirectly tells us that the staff of Omicron were considered less likely to be scanned for Catherine's Ark project. 2. She expounds on the reason why she killed herself, claiming that if the human you dies before the scan is initiated, or closely after, you yourself would live on in the Ark. 3. She confirms that Catherine had nothing to do with the rash of suicides that spread throughout Theta. And 4. She reasserts what we learned from the handheld communicator, that Strohmeyer held Catherine personally responsible for the suicides. As stated previously, Robin's dialogue is filled with important plot points. There's a great deal to mull over, and we'll examine all of them organically. Venturing into Theta, Simon finds the station, like all the others, abandoned. Functionally speaking, we learned that it was here where Catherine Chun conducted her brain scans, and where the majority of the Pathos 2 staff seemed to take residence. But thematically, Theta is where things took a turn for the worse. By investigating every nook and cranny of Theta, and by referencing what we've learned from the previously explored Pathos 2 stations, as well as the short film transmissions, we can reverse engineer the events which led to the downfall of Theta. According to transmissions, sometime after the impact event, the crew of Site Lambda were forced to abandon their station and relocate here to Theta. This tidbit is reinforced by the roster list found in the main office in Theta. Then, on April 28, 2103, Station Upsilon was evacuated as well, and its crew, save for Amy Azaro and Carl Semkin, relocated to Theta. Caught between primal and existential uncertainty, the crew of Pathos 2 found themselves swimming desperately against the current of extinction. A journal found in the living quarters of Catherine Chun shows how those at Pathos 2 sought to preserve humanity's memories. According to her journal, it started with Imogen Reed's discovery of a WoW-corrupted machine. Dated June 6, 2103, Catherine noted that this machine was assembled in a primitive fashion, almost as if it was designed specifically for the WoW to steal. The journal explains that this machine was capable of simulating the personalities of other Pathos 2 staff. On June 14th, 2103, Catherine dissected the machine, which she called the vivarium. She discovered that its architecture incorporated elements of a device called the AR capsule, a device she herself designed. It's this which allowed the vivarium to simulate the personalities of Pathos 2 staff. Catherine also realized that unlike the brain scans she used for the AR capsules, the WOW's copies were perfect simulations because they were not limited to the originated scans. On June 21st, 2103, Catherine formulated the idea that would eventually become the ARC project. By using the WOW's scanning techniques, she planned on uploading the consciousness of the Pathos 2 crew into a matrix-like digital world, which would then be launched into space. The device was aptly named the ARC. On June 22nd, 2103, Catherine surmised that the WOW had been using the pilot seats to steal the brain scans. She attributed the Mockingbird's existence to this theory. By July 3rd, 2103, Catherine had broached the subject of the ARC project with her colleagues. The idea had garnered positive reaction from the team, and shortly after, Catherine decided to interview individual members of the crew. July 7th, 2103, Catherine recorded her interview with Robin Bass, who at that time was still very much alive.
Are you excited about the ARC? At first, I couldn't really see the point of it. But then I thought, why shouldn't we, right? I mean, if we are able to save even just a small piece of ourselves, why wouldn't we do that? So you are in favor then? I think it's really important we do this.
The clip may be short, but it's long enough for us to detect a hopeful and resolved timbre in Robin's voice. Being so committed to the preservation of human existence, even in its smallest form, one can't help but wonder what or who could have convinced Robin to end her life. Well, enter Mark Serang. On July 9th, 2103, Mark was interviewed.
What are your thoughts on the ARC project?
The idea is just incredible, by every definition. It really makes you think about what it means to be human.
What makes you say that?
Beyond the basics, beyond the superficial, I'm convinced there's something with even greater value. You have provided a platform, which is not necessarily restricted to our digital progeny, but a means of actual survival. It's my sincerest belief that we can go on living through the reality of continuity.
Of the 3 interviews found at Lambda, Serang's is the most interesting. His outlook on the project was curiously philosophical, exuding a displaced confidence in an idea that he did not have a firm grasp of. It was this idea which warped into his belief of continuity. When Simon comes across Mark's quarters, he finds a number of signs admonishing non-permitted personnel from entering. These should indicate that Mark must have ranked pretty high in Pathos 2's hierarchy of command, since none of the other doors here have these signs plastered on them. Inside, we find confidential documents which allude to Mark's connection and involvement in getting the WOW set up as Pathos 2's governing AI. The document shown here also mentions the fabled Site Alpha, as well as 2 other Pathos 2 staff members, Julia Dahl and Johann Ross. Who they are, we're not sure of yet, but judging by the confidential nature of the document, as well as its tone, it's safe to presume that something more insidious was going on behind the scenes. Also in here, we find an audio diary which elaborates on Mark's belief of continuity.
Did you know that the human body consists of up to 75 trillion individual cells? They typically don't stay with us till we die. Some live a few days, while others live a few years. We're not affected by their short lifespans, as they're replaced by new cells which help sustain our bodies. I don't think anyone would argue that we ever lose our persona due to this process. Yet we are clearly in a constant state of transformation. Then how do we remain the same? A continuous flow of thought and perception keeps an unbroken chain of continuity that we know as our self. Our conscious mind is not the pattern of our brain, but a continuous, emergent entity based on that pattern. When Dr. Chun populates the Ark, she is capturing a moment of our existence and placing it inside the digital world. Soon you and your digital you will grow apart due to diverging experiences, but for a tiny window, you are the very same. With unbroken continuity, it will live on. A fulfilling life, no doubt, no less real than the one from which it was plucked. Now remember, you are not your body. You are the emergent entity. That entity just happens to occupy 2 places at once for a while. If you took away your body, you would simply be the only one you can be. The you inside the Ark. Let your body die and continue on in the digital paradise among the stars.
On July 12, 2103, Mark Serene killed himself. His suicide note was found by his colleagues, and his belief of continuity began to infect the more impressionable members of Theta's staff. The scan log found in Catherine's lab shows the extent and frequency of these suicides. Between the dates of July 12th and September 2nd, 2103, there were a total of 7. Mark Serene, Guy Conrad, Louise Muerin, Nathan Grau, Gavin Finley, Astrid Krier, and Robin Bass, all taking place shortly after being scanned for the ARC project. It's for this reason Strohmeyer reprimanded Catherine. As far as he was concerned, she was personally responsible for their deaths, and as a result, he placed the ARC project on indefinite hiatus. This meant that those at Omicron and subsequent Pathos 2 stations might never be scanned. One has to wonder, how could the continuity, a belief so unfounded in its credibility, have such an effect on these people? Well, you know what they say. Desperation breeds strange bedfellows, and the closest we'll ever get to finding out the answer is in the bedrooms of these poor, misguided men and women. Looking through the staff quarters gives us a more intimate understanding of these people, of their hopes and wishes, of their lives before the impact, and their lives after. Robin, for example, seemed to have a detachment from reality. She fantasized about a world far from the aquatic wilderness of the Atlantic. Her room is littered with drawings that are cartoonish bastardizations of Catherine's ARC renderings, equipped with Crayola greenery and beady-eyed dopes smiling and waving to whoever beholden of these drawings. The room is also noticeably bloody. It seems that by the time Robin killed herself, Strohmeyer had decided cleaning up after the dead was no longer worth it. When staring mortality in the face, it's not hard to imagine that even the strongest of us may falter and embrace someone, anyone, who provides a solution. And if that solution grants you passage to a paradise amongst the stars, well, who could really resist such an alluring prospect? It's easy to read this as frictional's critique on the notion of an afterlife, but in the context of the narrative, it's neither here or there. In the end, Serene might have truly believed this notion of continuity, but for everyone else, it was just opiate for the masses. After acquiring the security ciphers needed to access the Dunbat, Simon attempts to release the locks on the submersible. Of course, Murphy's Law rears its ugly head as the Dunbat awakens, revealing itself as a mockingbird. It falls from its bindings and into the ocean. As such, Simon is forced to proceed further into Theta's laboratory level. It's here he finds a chamber housing a prototype of the Ark. He also finds a journal entry by Catherine Chun dated 2 months after her last scan, which, according to the scan log in her lab, was September 2nd, 2103. That puts this entry somewhere near the beginning of November. The entry states that she decided to finalize the Ark with what scans she had, and that she was sorrowful about the inadvertent role she played in Theta's suicide problem. The entry which follows is a checklist confirming for Simon and the player what her final mission was to be, to complete the ARC project and bring it to Site Phi alongside her colleagues Ian Peterson, Jasper Hill, Nikolai Ivashkin, and Sarah Lindwell, the same Sarah Catherine spoke to via communicator earlier in the video. Nearby, we find a photo of the intrepid scientists, taken presumably right before embarking on their sojourn to Phi. This essentially concludes their story at Theta. From what we can tell, the next significant chronological event has to do with a woman named Vanessa Hart. According to an entry found on a computer in the medical laboratory, Vanessa was treated for bruises and mild hypothermia caused by, quote, the long walk. No additional information about this walk can be found in the game. However, the SOMA transmission short film shows us what happened to Hart, and the various other members of Theta that ended up at Lambda. As stated earlier, the crew of Lambda were forced to evacuate to Theta. Then, at some point in time, two of their crew members, Adam Galaski and Imogen Reed, returned to Lambda in an attempt to salvage usable resources. While there, they encountered a mockingbird simulating the personality of one Jacob Halperin. This mockingbird is presumed to be the first, if not one of the first, created by the WoW. Months later, a small group from Theta joined them at Lambda. The exact date of this occurrence is unknown. However, we can conclude that it most certainly took place after Delta's evacuation because one of the members of this group was Dorian Cronstant. If that name sounds familiar, it should. Dorian was the crewman who contacted Terry Akers about Delta's mandatory evacuation order. This group consisted of Baxter Rogers, Jessica Davis, Martin Fisher, Richard Holland, and most importantly, Vanessa Hart. The crew was there to assist in containing the structure gel leakage. However, the situation grew grave as members of the Theta team started dying. In the end, all but Vanessa Hart perished at Lambda. The sole survivor of the event, she made the long trek back to Theta on foot. She arrived on December 20th, 2103. The entry on Vanessa implies that not many people believed her recount of events. Though, of course, how could they? Stories about people being revived from the dead and transforming into monstrosities is utter craziness. Judging by their disbelief, it's safe to presume that the proxies had not yet become a widespread problem. Instead, the surviving members of Pathos II contended mostly with hostile mockingbirds and general survival. If only they had believed her. If only Amy Azaro was still around to corroborate the existence of these monsters. She, after all, must have encountered a proxy or two since she did happen to have a drawing of the Jiangshi in her sketchbook. If only. Then perhaps they could have stopped it. Or perhaps maybe more of them could have survived. Either way, the writing was on the wall, but no one cared enough to read it. According to a message found in the security checkpoint, on January 11, 2104, a huge structure gel leak caused the WoW to seize control over Theta's Dunbat, their submersible vessel. As a result, they were forced to quarantine it. From here, the narrative focus shifts back to the grotesqueries of earlier. On January 16, 2104, Nadine Masters examined Akers' body.
Terry Akers, Chief Factor at Delta, First Assessment. Brought in today, January 16th, 2104. Reportedly found in his diving suit, unconscious, in open water. Akers has clearly been consuming large amounts of structure gel for weeks, probably. It's difficult to tell how this has affected his health beyond the obvious non-movement, and if it somehow caused him to gouge out his eyes. Small amounts of gel have always been considered perfectly safe to handle, but I can't recall ever hearing about any recommendations on how to treat exposure. Considering its properties, I doubt it's poisonous, but the more transformative aspects of the fluid makes me think that malign cell mutations are to be expected. I think I will need to consult Dr. Eames at Omicron about this.
The message found in the office reinforces her findings further. Nadine laments on dismissing Vanessa's story as delusional. The abrupt ending of the message implies that something must have drawn her attention away, whether it be another emergency or, if the nearby body is any indication, perhaps Akers himself. What happened next isn't clearly documented, but what is known is that Akers reanimated and began his assault on the crew of Theta. Akers, now a calcified heap of flesh, was blind, yet stalked them relentlessly nonetheless.
Strohmeyer, you there?
I hear you, Brandon. What do you got?
Akers and his critters are ferocious. They pick up on every move. There's no way past them.
Then we'll fight them. We got to get to the shuttle.
And end up like Shank and Adams? No way. Listen, I'll create a distraction and pull them to me. Get the gang to the shuttle station.
Wait, Brandon, what are you doing?
Don't worry, Alice. I'll loop back as soon as you guys are safe. Just load up the shuttle and be ready to go.
Are you sure about this?
I don't plan to die today, sir. See you at the shuttle.
According to a note found in the security checkpoint, he was accompanied by at least 3 additional proxies, which is what likely drove the surviving members of Theta down into the basement, answering Catherine's question from earlier. why abandon the gate? Realizing that Theta was a lost cause, a small group of survivors banded together and attempted to escape. According to the data-mined audio logs found throughout Theta, and even areas thereafter, this group consisted of Alice Coster, Brandon Wan, Emma Alvaro, John Strohmeyer, Peter Strasky, Richard Tabo, Vanessa Hart, and Vigdis Jonsitter. Unfortunately for Brandon Wan, he never made it past the laboratory floor.
Strohmeyer!
Brandon, where are you?
It got out of hand. I'm in sector RD4. Did you get everyone downstairs?
Yeah, we're safe for now. But you need to get moving. They're gonna figure out where we are and come for us.
Don't worry about it. The stairs are blocked, and I killed the elevator. Pulled the connector chip from the lock.
Fine. That means you're stuck as well.
Only way to keep you guys safe. Take the shuttle, go to Omicron.
God damn it, Juan. You just had to be the hero, you bastard.
Good luck, sir. Tell Alice I love her.
His body can be found in Omega Management. Alice Coster would be even less fortunate. Her assimilated remains can be found in a shuttle in the basement. Simon retraces the steps of this desperate group of survivors. He avoids Akers and reactivates the laboratory elevator, taking it downward towards the transport level. After another encounter with Akers, he manages to navigate his way through the dark halls of Theta's basement, avoiding other lesser proxies along the way, until eventually reaching a large flooded chamber. Simon makes his way to the other side of this chamber, where he finds the emergency drainage system. Pulling the lever, he gets flushed out of the station and ejected into the Atlantic. It's here he finds the first of the evacuees. Here lies Vanessa Hart, sole survivor of Lambda, would-be savior to Theta's last remaining humans.
What happened? What did she do?
Come on, we gotta get her out of there.
Holy shit, Hart blew up the O2 surplus. She sealed the tunnel.
She really didn't want Akers following us to Omicron.
Ah, shit, she's fucking hurt.
Her suit is leaking.
We have to get her to Omicron.
Shit, it's bad, real bad.
Oh, fuck, no!
Having survived the harrowing halls of Theta, the remaining members of this group made their way to Omicron, only to find it inaccessible due to a station-wide quarantine. One after the other, the evacuees from Theta began to die. Outside the gates of Omicron, we find the remains of Jonesy.
Hey, come on! Open up! What is this shit? Armor for the apocalypse?
Omicron is in quarantine. This is why they didn't answer our call.
Hello!
Christ, Strasky, it's called a radio. They're not gonna hear you better if you scream.
Jonesy, are you okay? Look, I know you're the strong silent type, but I need you to say something every now and then so I know you're all right. Jonesy? Jones.
Fuck's sakes. Let's try the annex again. Maybe we can break in.
We're losing Jonesy. We need to get her inside.
Well, get in line!
Alvaro, there's nothing we can do for her right now. Hit the stasis switch and let's check the annex.
At the foot of the outbuilding, we find Peter Strasky.
It won't fucking open! And nobody's answering to anything! What kind of cold-hearted motherfuckers would just leave us out here to die?
Don't you get it? They're dead. They're all dead.
Yeah, you're right.
How can you be so calm about this shit? We are dying!
How much air have you guys got?
20 minutes, tops.
Hey, I'm in red! Seconds away before the CO2 gets me.
Strasky?
Why wait, right? I'm the master of my own fate.
Wait, Strask, what are you doing?
Judging by his black box and exposed head, it's evident he killed himself by removing his helmet in an attempt to stave off carbon dioxide poisoning. If you ask me, his means of suicide sounds like it'd be the more painful way to go out. Though, when the counter is ticking down and you know that there is no way to prevent the inevitable and all you want to do is hold on to what little control you have left, I can understand the drive to be the executor of one's own fate. It's his final act of independency. Nearby, we find the remains of Emma Alvaro, who in her final moments sat down to contemplate the fruitlessness of all their efforts.
The world is dead, Richard. Even if we got inside Omicron, what's left? Grab a couple suits and head for Tau? Strasky, Jonesy, Hart. Everyone is dead. and we are right behind them. We're probably the last people left alive. The last moments of mankind. No oxygen left. Better sit down. Don't want to fall into the abyss.
There are worse ways to die. Probably. Why they call you M?
Huh? Oh, it's for Emma.
Emma Alvaro. I like that. It's a good name. We should have hung out more. I think we would have made good friends.
Thanks. I would have liked that.
Goodbye, Emma.
Bye.
As for Strohmeyer and Richard, the last survivors of Theta, their whereabouts are unknown. It's possible Strohmeyer never made it out of Theta, and instead ended up as one of the many bodies Simon passes on his way out. There's no evidence to support this theory, thus any speculation would be considered unfounded. Richard's fate is also unknown. The only thing we can know for certain is that he had enough energy and oxygen to leave Emma in her last moments. The faint sound of fading footsteps can be heard in her black box audio. Perhaps he walked away to find a place to die, a place with a view. Or perhaps he didn't quite give up yet. Perhaps he pushed forward, determined to try his luck with Omicron's alternate entrance. If he's lucky, he never made it inside Omicron. If he's lucky, he fell from the catwalk and sank into the abyss, where he was crushed by the immense pressures of its Stygian depths, because as painful a death as that may be, it pales in comparison to a life as a desiccated vegetable. In the world of SOMA, there are no deus ex machinas to whisk us away from certain death. In the world of SOMA, the sad truth is, the dead are the lucky ones.